Scott.
I'd like to bring the meeting to order. If you please stand for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Lord, we are meeting today to conduct matters of business. Guide our hearts and minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so that our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
Justice for all.
Okay, welcome everyone. September 1st. Summer's gone. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lingo, Mrs. Moody,
Here.
Mr. Parsons,
Here.
Ms. Peterson,
Here.
Mr. Redding,
Here.
Mrs. Dosa,
Here.
Mr. George.
Here.
Okay, Miss Lingo could not make it tonight due to a illness. I'm going to have somebody make a motion to
Make
excuse.
a motion to excuse Miss Lingo.
Okay, Mr. George
I
is
second it.
Mr. George has made a motion and Ms. Moody has seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. You have the minutes before you. They were on your desk. Is there any corrections that anybody has seen? I know you just got them. Mr.
Yeah,
George?
A small one on my committee report. Should say schools begin officially on September 18th. September 8th online. So just change began to begin.
Okay, so you're changing began to like will begin?
Yeah, or will begin.
All right. Anybody else? Motion to adopt is corrected.
I make.
Ms. Peterson has made a motion to adopt as printed.
I'll second.
As corrected, I'm sorry. And Mr. Parsons has made a motion, or a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Correspondence. There were some things on your desk. Bill, this parade permit application, is that something you'll
We'll
cover?
cover, it's going to be part of the work session.
Okay. You had some items in your packet and on your desk. You know what they are. I have no other correspondence. Does anybody else have anything? Guest and special events? None? Public input. This is a section of our meeting where public likes to input, and right now they're forbidden to be in the room. And we do have online, know that they can call in, and we'll give them a moment for that. Or if they do call in, we'll jump back to them. Don't want to exclude anybody.
Sure.
Is it operating tonight, Bill?
It looks
Yep.
like it. I mean, we're
Got the
definitely
thumbs up.
live. You look good. The camera doesn't add 10 pounds. Don't believe what they
Okay.
tell you, Ross. I don't, I only see two people are waiting, so we're live, right? Yep, okay. But like you said, if somebody comes in, we can
Yeah.
accommodate.
We'll move on to the mayor's report, Mr. Wolf.
Yeah, not much. Right now, the farmer's market is this Sunday. Just want to remind people of that. We will have, I've been running the voter registration booth there as well, and we also have applications for absentee ballots if anyone needs that. And this weekend, I also have forms for people to fill out to sign up to work the polls on Election Day. Apparently, a lot of people that typically work the polls are often elderly and aren't as comfortable working it this year. So I know there's a need for that, so I will have those forms available as well. So if anyone wants to work on election day at a polling location, you can come up and see me, and I'll have the forms for you. You can mail them yourself, or I just mail a packet of all that stuff in. Actually, I drop it off in Norwood the day after the farmer's market. So I'll be up there doing that. I also, just today, so I've mentioned it before, I've talked to Bill about it, I have had some complaints from residents about our concerts, about the fact that we're holding concerts still. You know, we've discussed it, and for the most part, it seems people are social distancing when they're at those. They're outside, typically sitting, they're not standing up in a big crowd. So we have continued to have these concerts. I did get some pictures just today from a resident that was concerned. There did seem to be some groups that work kind of close together, requesting that we cancel the concerts. But I believe we only have one left, right?
Friday's the last night.
This Friday. So I do think it wouldn't be a good move to cancel it that close. But I would appreciate any feedback you all have with that. I think it's one of those things that's outside. We're asking people to social distance and mask. There's plenty of room for people to do that. It's unfortunate if some people aren't. I don't think we should cancel the last one. If we still had 5, 6 left, we might want to change our discussion and how to maybe, I don't want to use the word enforce, but, you know, enforce social distancing. But at this point, with one left, I don't know if that's necessary, unless anybody feels strongly otherwise. I think we'll just move forward and again ask people to distance.
The ones I went to, and you, Bob, you know better than me, I didn't go to the last one. I mean, there were a number of people there, but I felt there was plenty of room to distance, and the signs that were put up were extremely appropriate. They were very professional. That the city put up asking for what the regulations were to be there. So, you know, I understand their concern, but there's plenty of room to make sure you're far enough away. And I don't know if you want to police people. For all I know, they're relatives and they live in the same household. I don't really know how you can determine if people are sitting close together. So I don't know. Were you at the last concert?
I would say there were over 200 people Friday night. It was a huge concert. Pretty much social distance, 6 feet apart, but like Ms. Moody says, there were groups that were probably friends or family that were together. There is some people walking between groups. But for the most part, I think it was pretty well distanced. I mean, the picnic tables are set pretty far apart, and people bring their chairs and set them in between and try to leave room between front and back. It's not too bad. Now, I'm not sure if the people that are complaining are attending the concert or if they're just going by and seeing it or what it is.
Mostly residents who live close to the park. You could see from their yards.
They can see it from their yard. Okay, well, that was a special concert.
It was at Bel Air's, right?
I'm sorry?
Was that the Bel Air?
The Bel Air's, yes.
Big one.
There'll probably be a fairly large group this week, since it's the last one. It's King Bee and the Stingers, and they're pretty well attended. I would say 80% or more of the attendees are groupies,
Yep.
people that follow the band around, not necessarily Mount Healthy residents. But, and there's not a lot we can do. I mean, we can get up and announce at the beginning of the concert and then halfway through, you know, please mind your social distancing. And but, you know, I don't think it's necessary to cancel the concert.
Yeah, I can ask Ray to ask them a couple times during the concert to say, hey, you know, let's keep our distance. We're doing a good job. I mean, for the most part, I know Melanie's taken some of the calls. I mean, most of the feedback we get is very positive. People are very thankful that, you know, we're still doing that. It gives them something to look forward to. We review, everything's on camera nowadays, right? They go in and on Mondays and go back, try to determine the number of people and look at it. And like you said, I think for the most part, we've seen that it is, you know, people are trying to adhere to it, so.
It could be that when I was coming back from Michigan, so I kind of went that way to see how many people were in the park, and there were a lot of cars. So sometimes if there's only 2 people per car, and you've got a lot, the amount of cars that were parked in Assumption and on the street, and then there, it was like, wow. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the cars. So sometimes that can give the appearance of a bigger crowd than there is, but I thought it was a good thing, and I think the signs that are up at the park are so professionally done that really remind people that, yeah.
Great.
All right, well, we'll just move forward with the last one. Luckily, we only have one left as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Now, in line with that, I do just want to let you all know, I've actually had a couple groups that have done or want to do trunk or treats this year. I know there's a lot of questions about whether trick or treating will happen or not. So I reached out to Hamilton County Public Health for some guidance, and they haven't gotten back with me yet. I know when I called for the Mount Healthy Haunted Hall last month, we were the first ones to even ask a question about haunted houses. So I think right now people are working in the immediate, so I'm not sure what the answer will be on that. But I know there are churches in town and other groups that do trunk or treats. They were mentioning they could do it, their cars 6 feet away from each other and wearing masks, and we'll see what we get back from the county. So it would be nice, once we get an answer from that, I not only will respond to the individuals that asked me, but I'll also make sure that information's spread other places so that other groups can hear that as well. And then I haven't heard anything about Halloween, so
I was just going to ask that.
sure we'll all hear that. Now, I'll follow up with that, but who knows? I mean, it seems like we're a while off, but
They'll be here before you know it.
right, with trunk or treats, people want to advertise, they want to buy supplies, et cetera, so that's where that issue
Seems
came
like
in.
the most appropriate holiday, right? I mean, everybody's wearing masks
That's
anyway,
right.
so, right?
That's exactly right. So that's it for my report right now. I do have some ideas Jenny and I talked about through We Thrive and through some other things as far as the community development block grant money that's going to be coming in, but I think we're going to discuss that in the next meeting, is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I just threw that out at the last meeting.
Yeah.
We need to, they've been working on there's some COVID dollars that are available that we thought we could get, but I don't think that we are going to be able to. And there's some other things they're pushing now, and they really haven't set up the guidance for but this is the time that we'll start the next 3-year cycle, in preparing for that.
So I just want to put that in your heads, think about ideas. We've used it in the park in the past, a lot of money in the park. We use on the main theater a bit, right? No, we didn't use main theater.
No, this time we used the fire department. We got 100 was it 35-year, Melanie, right? 150, so 105,000 for the fire department, so.
Just keep in your mind, and we'll have some ideas to present at a later meeting. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any questions? Okay, going to move on to the city manager's report. Mr. Coker.
Great, there's an email in your packet today, that was in your packet about the Board of Elections. They contacted us, and that is just strictly COVID-driven, that they won't be able to have the elections in our community room over there. It's just not enough space for what they need, so they're going to move it over to Assumption. They're going to have signs indicating and try to get that out, but we'll let everybody know if you voted at the community room last time, you'll vote over at Assumption this time. So it's glad that they were able to get it in that close proximity. And kind of along with that, we gave an exam for the full-time officer for both a vacancy that we have and for the preparing for the COPS grant that we a couple more officers, and we had 48 people sign up to take the exam.
Wow.
Bloomed at the last week. So then we ran into issues. We didn't have enough space over there for everybody. And luckily we worked with American Legion. They have that big area. Actually 34 people ended up only showing up, but it was plenty of space. We had social distancing, and it was a good thing. The civil service is going to meet tomorrow to start certifying the results, and that will get back hopefully by the end of this week. So we're excited to get moving forward on
Yes.
that. So that turned out well. So the somebody had asked me to talk about the zoning code update. This thing's been going on for a while. You know, we were really going hard, had meetings through the end of last year, into January and February, and then, you know, COVID hit and really just shut down. And we started back in July, and we actually have another meeting on Friday. The group again is Jim Lowenberg, Betty, Dave, Kim, Diane, myself, and so we're strictly doing Zoom right now. But we've made a lot of progress, and we've gone through the code. A lot of meetings of like talking specifics on sections and so forth. John taking that information. Now we're at the point where he's feeding this stuff back to us, and we're kind of reviewing and progressing through the zone, or through each section as to where we're going to make the modifications, changes, recommendations, so forth. So I hope that within another month or so, we're going to get to the point where, once the committee has it done, I believe the process is through Planning Commission first, I believe, and then full council approval. But I'll share all that with you when we get there. So, kind of was a dead period of about three or 4 months, but we've really picked it back up. Yeah, Joe.
Any hard spots yet, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, we've also, Gordon wasn't part of this process just because he's he's working full time, and Bill. But once we got through everything and we had the first draft of it, we sent it to them as well for comment. So they've been able to provide a lot of comment on it. And yeah, I think there's been some good discussion, some agree to disagree. Kind of come to conclusions on some things. But talked a lot at times on some of the problems that we've seen and the issues that we've had with whether it's the group homes and how do you address those, and just a lot of the things that have come up, and some lot different ideas. I think it's good to see different approaches on things. One of the things I kept seeing is everything seems to come back to Planning Commission as a conditional use, and I mean, and if it's that's where it's at, basically it's allowed with conditions. Well, we've struggled, trying to put conditions. All right, we can put on conditions, but how do you enforce those? How do you manage those? It just becomes a real challenge, and it's real hard for the Planning Commission because basically, if it's a conditional use, it's allowed. It's just we just got to kind of come up with that. So there's some different approaches we're going to look at with that. So I think it's been really good. I think we got a neat mix, with Dave is an architect, Betty's, business owner, Kim, business association, Jim has been involved with the city in a lot of different things. So it's been a lot of good input.
Anything specific, and I guess what I'm thinking about, Bill, is our discussion the other day about, how they're kind of, they're partitioning off, certain buildings up in the business district to create more businesses, right? Mm-hmm. So was there any discussion on, say, like business density or anything like that, or? I mean, density requirements?
No, I can't recall there's definitely discussions about density, property, from residential all the way up to that, we've talked a lot about, if businesses and if they were to relocate or build new and different things like that. But I don't think we've got into the detail of if a business wants to split up, how do you do that? Except for, a lot of times we talked about that came up in signage. How do you get enough sign if a building's going to have 2 or 3, and you kind of see that. Remember, like with the library building and right in the Masons, and you have that corner sign that you can share that because everybody can't get, everybody's going to be, you don't want the last person there, with no footage left to be able to put on the building. So there's been different types of discussions, but yeah, I don't know if we've gone specific on, what they're doing up at if you're referring to like the old hardware store or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I can see more of that happening, right? So, yep.
Yeah, and I mean, again, this is stuff that as we go through this, council can, put their thumbprint on it as well. Any more questions? One thing, and we'll spend a little bit of time on the road priorities. I got that late. The Healthcare Connection is going to have a soft opening on September 11th, a week from Friday at 10 a.m. I think they're going to start seeing some patients then the next week. They'd like to have an elected official come. It's going to be a small event, spread out. Is anybody available at 10 a.m. on the 11th?
I should be. I would be kind of interested, part of with the We Thrive. I think it would be a good connection
Great.
for somebody from We Thrive, but I don't have to be the only one, obviously, but I think I can.
Awesome.
What day of the week is
That's a
it?
Friday, 10 a.m.
I could probably.
on the 11th. Okay,
I may be able to make it,
okay.
yeah.
I just need to know.
Been a long time coming,
put me
hasn't
down.
it?
I told him by Friday. I just need to know by noon on Friday. I told him I'd let them know. And that way they can just, acknowledge you and put it as part of the agenda. And I think that I think the event's only going to go for an hour or less. But I think if you want, you can tour the building afterwards. But I think they want to do that in smaller groups. So if you're also interested in a tour, let me know. All right, great. And the last thing, we started to discuss this last week, our last meeting, and this is on the road priorities. I spent a lot of time. I know Joe had a committee meeting, I think, and some of this was discussed because we're getting ready to apply for our state funding. And typically when we talk about projects, we talk about skip projects. I think people are familiar with that term. Because that's typically how the city's set up to get funding. A big factor, scoring factor, and a lot of people can attest to this, is condition of the road, and we unfortunately score really well on some of those on some of our projects. So that's typically the projects that we get funded. A big discussion this time of year is whether we do a 20% match or a 30% match. Pretty much for years, we could get by on a 20% match. But, lately we've been doing 20 and it's been falling below the funding line, and then we had to wait. And one year we had to wait an extra year. We went 30 on Adams and scored well and got it funded. So I think we've kind of shifted that. And typically then what we do is the other 30% is we're doing the 0% loans. So the whole project is funded either through grants or 0% loans that we pay over the 30 years. So, as we discussed last time, I think Madison and Forest, that was our second priority last year, and we talked about moving that up. And at a 30% match, you see the breakout of funding here. These projects are just amazing every year, as you can see more. I mean, $1.3 million. Our street levy generates $100,000, so we've really got to get creative with how we get this funded.
Yep. Oh, did that come back? $1.3 million? Or, I guess the 200,000 is the
That also includes
engineering.
engineering, remember we
Yeah.
talked, so engineering is about 13%.
That's right.
So
You
the
did- we
project's
talked
about a million,
1.1?
yeah.
Okay, so the 1,331,000 includes engineering?
Yeah, you probably can't see it on there, but it
Says
is.
construction.
Oh, I do see it.
Okay.
I got to read it, but I didn't read it.
Okay, sorry. And it's confusing because we don't include that on the Hamilton Avenue project because we're going a different route to try to get the engineering paid that way. So it is confusing. One of the things I don't have here yet, and I still think we're okay, but we then talked about moving Compton in as a second priority. We need to, I think, hone in on the percentage. We had a document that we shared last time where we talked about Compton Road being about an $800,000 project. That's not the case, and that was discussed and a lot back and forth with our engineers. John was out first week, and then and this week, and we never were able to get a solid number. So he's working on that. I know I was expecting it today, and I didn't get it. But I think it's going to be north of that 1.3 because I think the 800,000 didn't include a lot of concrete work. And we know, we've talked about it, especially the curbs between Hamilton and Harrison are horrific. There's other areas, and you'll need some driveway apron, as we move through it. One good news is that as soon as we can get through the federal funding, it's funny, I had a good conversation with Steve today because he got the paperwork for the grant, the $70,000 grant they got for the SCBA PACs, and and all the federal. I said, welcome to getting money from the federal government. It is a daunting task at times, and that's where the Safe Route from Schools. Great thing is 100% funded. I mean, the hoops that we've had to go through has just been crazy. But we are going to finish that concrete work there, so that won't be part of it. But if I don't know. I got to think the project's probably going to be $1 million too, with everything in on Compton. So we'll have to decide if that's our second priority. Now, the third project we've talked about on and off, and that's Hamilton Avenue, Corp line to Corp line. A lot of people have talked about it too because Hamilton's getting bad. And we receive funding for this project through an urban paving project, which is a source of revenue from the state. So like I said at the beginning here, we talk a lot about SCIP funding. Well, it's SCIP and LTIP. You always see that, even like when we get the ordinance together, once we decide our priorities and do all that, we put an ordinance together and you guys approve it to move forward with the grant request. SCIP and LTIP are always on there. We never talk about LTIP because LTIP addresses other things that typically we're not looking at. City number one, it's sometimes for expansion. It's a lot of times for congestion, but it also there's a scoring factor in there based on match. And when we're only bringing in $100,000 or don't have a lot of money, it's difficult to get into the neighborhood that you need to be with this match. But what we can do is we can take the one grant money that we get for the urban paving project and show that as outside funds and score much better on an LTIP project. So you can see the breakout of what they're proposing that we go through as a third priority, kind of LTIP, which is a different way for us to fund a project. We can use our existing ODOT funding. That first one is the urban paving project. Try to get an LTIP fund at the other half. Use our municipal road fund. We get that every several years. The latest we got it was for Adams Road. Municipal road fund usually is around $100,000. I think we got $88,000 for Adams. You don't get it every year, but we're hopefully in line to get that. So, there's a potential that we could be on the hook, like we talked about for Hamilton Avenue, for half if we don't get the LTIP grant, or we could be able to nearly get it completely funded. So I think that makes a lot of sense to put that in as a priority and try to get LTIP funding and at least get it scored. The project is funded under ODOT calendars, which every time I talk about them, they confuse. I mean, they're already in 2021, which I'm sure everybody wishes they were, right? I mean, because 2020 has been so bad, but it is really looking to maybe be funded in July of next year and maybe not go to construction until almost 2021. But if we can get all of our funding lined up, we should be in pretty good shape.
If we don't get the LTIP, is that $500,000 eligible for the 0% loan, or do we have to pay that out?
Well, the LTIP is LTIP is a grant. Then it would be more of I think a SCIP project. So then, again, as our third priority, maybe not, because we've talked about, and I can get clarity on that from. I don't think you can ask for both. You know what I'm saying? If we're gonna go in as an LTIP project, that's what we're submitting for. If it fails, if it scores poorly, we maybe still be able to sneak it in, right? For at this time next year, because the project probably won't be going until January, and then hopefully we can work it that way. I don't know. So we could see. Maybe we see where it scores, and because this is kind of looks as a 50% match. If we're really close but we don't get it funded, maybe we want to kick in an extra 100 or so. You know what I mean? To try to get the. Now we're doing a 60% match, whatever that number might be. To really get the LTIP for next year. I mean, I think it just gives us some options. Joe, do you have any more? I know you guys talked a little bit about this.
Yeah, I guess I'm going back to what Bob says, just so I understand it. if we don't get the LTIP and we put in for this, then what happens? Or how does the succession work? Do we do we apply for LTIP money at the same time we're applying for the job? Or,
Well, the skip and LTIP are requested at the same time every year,
okay.
right? So
So if we don't get one, so say we get skip funding and we don't get LTIP funding, then
we're
are
in the
we
same
on?
place we are right now, because right now, all that we have funded on that project, we're estimating, again, let me just review the Hamilton Avenue project.
That's what I'm
Urban-
talking
The
about.
urban paving project pays for 80%, an 80-20 match on the grind and overlay, right?
Right,
But they pay zero on any curb work, any other kind of restoration that needs to be done. They say typically, what that ends up being is around, the whole project is about a 50% match on each side. So, they're offering us $570,000. We don't want to turn that down. But we've talked
Absolutely.
about this, I think, we kind of had this out there, like, we've got to, if we don't get this grant, then we either got to look for a loan, maybe I think scoring it this year will be good with LTIP. I still think we could apply next year because the project's not going to, probably going until January.
right, okay.
So we have some options. I mean, the worst case is we might have to do an outside loan outside of the zero. I mean, right now we have no other.
That's where my
Our debt
question's
capacity
leading.
is pretty good. I mean, the only loan we have is what we tied up for the uptown projects. We've had those other side loans when we did the LED projects. We bought properties. Everything's paid for. So, I mean, that might be, because we don't want to turn down the 570, right? So,
Exactly.
right.
And that's what I'm kind of going back to is how do we risk this out if we don't get LTIP? And does that change Madison and Forest and Compton?
Well, I think what they're saying is these are our priorities, right?
Right.
So we can't wait to see what the results are and then change our mind, right? So we gotta submit. I'm pretty confident at 30% Madison Forest Avenue gets funded. Hopefully we get the skip funding, we get a 0% loan, and we blow forward on that project. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, one of the things typically when we do a second priority, we don't usually do a very high match on that.
Right.
Throw it out there, get it scored. That's something council can determine. I mean, we can do a 20, we can do a 30%. I mean, match on that project. It might score it a little bit better. I think it'll be a challenge to get them both funded, but this is kind of the way we've worked. And then we move Compton up the next year as the one priority, and then we move in the other streets. Is kind of how we've been progressing through this.
I think we're on the same page. So what I'm saying is, we get Madison and Forest, we're on the hook for $400,000.
Correct.
Okay. We come along and we get Compton. Now we're on the hook. I just used 1.2 million, so we're on the hook for another 360. And then all of a sudden we get Hamilton, but we don't get LTIP.
Right.
Now we're on the hook for another 568K.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree.
But the first 600,000 or 700,000 you talked about would be on loans for 30 years, 0%.
Yeah. So the impact to our $105,000 now only becomes about $40,000 every year available when we pay that loan, right? Because we'll be on the hook for about $60,000 a year. When we're talking about Adams, what we're doing on Adams and Elizabeth, and this would get us up to about $60K, right?
Right. Right
Along
now,
with
right
other
now,
26.
with all the projects we've done, Perry, the different Maple was even included in that, whatever.
Yeah.
We're right around 25,000. So right now we're paying $25,000 a year on our zero
Right.
loans that we have. So yes, that leaves, and so adding these other projects in here, yeah, I mean, again, we don't have to take the funding. I mean, I would hate to turn down, Hamilton at 570.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying, I'm wondering if we, I don't know, pull back on Compton Road or put in a lower percentage, maybe we don't get it, or do we go after all three, and you're looking at,
That's a fair question. I mean, I can go back to, GMA doesn't have, they don't know, but I guess, one of the things I don't know a lot because we haven't really gone after LTIP funds, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? why is it they want to make this our third priority? Are we better off making it a second priority? Is that going to make a difference or not? Or is it because we have such a strong, because we can use all those outside funds, and we're going to throw in another 95,000 for municipal road funds? That's a pretty big percentage. Maybe they're saying, hey, at a third priority, you guys could be in pretty good shape, to get that. Maybe you're not going to maybe get all three, but at least you could get 1 and 3, because you're probably not going to get 2 skip projects at a 30% match. I mean, that's going to be. I mean, they spread the money around pretty well throughout the county.
So maybe, can we use CDBG at all for any of this on Hamilton Avenue?
Yeah. That's about 100,000. 105,000. We haven't done that in a while. Like the mayor had just said, we use it for the park, and we're using it for fire this year.
And do we think that using CDBG as another source helps us procure the 568 from LTIP? I don't know.
I don't know.
That's just a question.
Yeah, I can pose that question.
So that's kind of where I'm going.
Okay.
I'm a little concerned
yeah,
about what we have, when we go to do other projects that aren't going to be funded. We're going to have about 55,000 left out of our street levy every year to do not a whole lot, right? So, and we do have the gas tax money, which is probably significantly down because not everybody's driving to work every day, so.
It is down, yeah. No, these are good questions. I'll ask Jennifer what adding community development, just to share that, and does it make sense to flip-flop 2 and 3?
Yeah.
Just to say, it's
Yeah.
council ultimate decision, and then also council needs to determine what the match we want to do on Compton is. So.
And then secondary concern is, what's our deadline? Do we have a solid deadline?
But usually it's I think the email I sent you, it was
I don't think there was a date on that
it was
email.
the third, I forget, it was the 3rd or 4th Friday in September, but I've already said they know they're not going to meet that deadline, so.
Also, yes, we talked about that,
Yeah.
but what I was checking on is, did they ever give us a solid date
No,
yet?
not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So it could be
If it
pushed back
is,
into October.
if we do, I can get information out, and we
Yeah.
will have a meeting on the 15th, which
Right.
will be before, but they've already talked about extending the deadline because just of everything that's going on.
Okay.
Well, we had a long committee meeting and came up with a recommendation, but I don't know where that went.
Well, I think it's kind of changed because of this potential LTIP money, right? I mean, and we
I
have
don't-
to look at our risk.
I don't think it changed.
So let me make sure I understand here. You're thinking Madison Forest, Compton Road, and Hamilton Avenue?
Hamilton Avenue's a given. That's required in 2022.
Yes.
The funding isn't given, so we may have to pay a big chunk of that.
Yes.
But the other projects, the skip projects we want to apply for, I think we agreed to.
Oh, yeah, yes, that part of it, but I don't think we nailed down the percentage, right? Do you want to go 30-30? Do you want to go 30-20? Just be aware, we're on the hook for a lot of money.
So you met in committee and came up with a plan.
Yes.
So you're kind of discussing whether you wanted that plan that you came up in committee meeting?
Well, understand, we were not fully aware of how LTIP impacts, how we're impacted by this LTIP grant.
Because I appreciate the fact that the committee met. So when you come forth with a plan, you kind of think the committee went through everything.
Well-
So you want to take that back to committee again?
I
or-
think, well, at this point, now knowing what we know over the last week, we may want to.
Because of why? Because of the LTIP?
Yes, because of what we know with the LTIP. And that was really a big unknown, even during our committee meeting, we talked about it, but none of us were real sure how it impacted anything.
But that would still, this is a positive, though.
What's that?
So how would it, I'm sorry, but, so that, to me, the LTIP is a potential,
It's extremely positive,
Yeah.
if we get it.
right, well, that's always the case.
If we
Right.
don't get it,
Right.
and we put in for this, then we gotta come up with the 568.
But as Bob said, it's kind of a given you have to do Hamilton Avenue anyway in 2022, right? So-
2022, and as Bill said, we
So you're
may or
thinking
may
you would
not
take
have
one of
to.
these other ones off?
I'm sorry?
So you're thinking that because Hamilton Avenue is going to happen, that one of the other one or two would be taken off the board?
We don't have to necessarily take it off, we can just reduce the matching part, the 20% versus 30%. So we have options.
And the other thing that I think we've talked about in finance too is we do have a decent carryover in our CIP fund. So, you know, with Hamilton Avenue, if we don't get it, you know, maybe instead of having to borrow 560, we could put 250, you know, from that fund in there, and then talking about a less amount that we have to try to secure. I mean, we do have some of those options too.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and that's why I brought up CDBG, but
I do want to be careful talking about using the gas tax for this, because as we talked about before, there are no matching funds for alleys and parking lots.
that's correct. Yep.
So our plan was to allocate the gas tax money for alleys and parking lots, because that was money we weren't expecting.
Right.
And those haven't been touched in a long time.
Nope, they sure haven't.
And there, as far as I know, there's never funding for those.
Right.
Nope,
So
there isn't.
I think it's important that we don't leave that behind.
No, I don't want to diminish it by any means, but again, if we can get that 568, and if we wait a year, that's fine, if that's possible. Because as Bob said, it's not a project until 2022. When do we need the money?
Well, I mean, the state, you think we move slow? I mean, it moves even slower, right? So no, they've got the schedule out. Now the design work is starting. It's starting now. And, you know, the project will sell and then, and be awarded in July, you know, so then you got a time from July to, but they've already said, based on where they're at, it probably they won't, you know, go in under contract until till January. I mean, so the project will be being bid out, you know, at the same time that these others are. So we got to have that, you know, we've got to have that money, you know, figured out before then.
Yeah.
Not figured out tonight, but we got options, I think. But I think
Okay.
this is a good discussion with the LTIP, because that could be great. That, you know, when you look at that, city's cost of 17,000
Yeah.
would be huge.
Yep,
So I'll get some clarity from JMA. Hopefully get some more clarity as to when we got to move. I don't think we'll have to vote on it next week, the next meeting. I think we'll be able to go into October, just because they've already indicated that they know it's not going to be on the same date, same timing as last year. They just haven't
Okay.
told us that. But I think we're doing the right thing of getting it figured out here, and then be ready to roll with it.
okay.
I got another question regarding the streets. What's going on with Adams and that project?
Yeah, that was one of the questions on our list here too. I mean, they're starting the, I mean, Jamie can probably tell, I mean, they're starting to mark and do some engineering and,
I haven't seen anything yet, but
oh, there's not been anything out, nobody's out there, okay?
not that I've noticed.
Okay, all right. I mean, the project, I know that the engineers didn't start on it until we secured the funding, but I thought some people had said that there was some, they were getting going on some of the surveying and different things like that, but I can follow up.
Has it been bid?
No, they didn't, I mean, when, I mean, they didn't think it was gonna be funded this year, right? I mean, we didn't know, and, I mean,
Right.
but they didn't pass the budget until July, or they didn't even pass it on time in July, and it was always talked about not being funded. So we really didn't know that this thing was happening or not really until August. So once it was funded, then I know that the engineer started some of this stuff. So to be honest with you, it's not getting ready to break ground. I mean, it's gonna be not completed until next year.
Well, they didn't pass legislation till what?
It was sometime.
Our last meeting? in
July or August.
Yeah, so,
What about the Waterworks on Elizabeth?
Right, because the Adams is good, but but Elizabeth, that was definitely part of the project, so. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're going to do that before we start, or
Yeah, absolutely.
is that part of our contractor doing that?
Yeah, it will be bid, the Waterworks will do it'll be like every other project.
Yeah.
I asked to, when this was, because it was two different funding sources, when this was all hung up, whether Waterworks would go in and, we knowing that it was coming, and at least get the Waterworks project going, and they wouldn't do it. So, but yeah, it'll all be coordinated.
Yeah, that was my understanding. And typically it is, so.
Oh, yeah. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coker. We're going to move on to our ordinances, resolutions. We have no second readings on ordinances. That was a misprint. We closed all those out last week, or 2 weeks ago. So we go to the first reading of ordinances. An ordinance amending section 34.21 in the Mount Healthy, Ohio Code of Ordinances, 20-1917. Discussion.
Yeah. You got a different copy on your desk tonight that's very different than what the original one that we put in the packet. And honestly, we talked about this last time. We knew we had to do it. I knew that we had recently increased from 11 to 12 within the last few years. It was actually in June of 2018. And I wish I could have said, well, I wasn't there that night, because I would have caught some of this stuff, but I was. Because it really doesn't make sense. Really what we need to do is council sets the number of full-timers that we can have. And then each year it's as through the budgeting process, they approve the salaries and stuff and the makeup of the department. We talked about, we haven't had 3 sergeants in a few years. And it was confusing. I think once you looked at this, we've always had a max of, until recent, we had 11 for years, right? And then we moved it to 12. And if you look at this, somebody could look at this and say, well, really, this talks about 12 full-time, 3 sergeants, a chief. How many is that? It could be 16, right? So, and on top of that, for the last few years, few cycles in our part-time contract, there's language in that we've approved that basically says they'll never have any more than the number of full-time officers. It's not set by the mayor as it was indicated in here. So we just kind of punted and reset on this and just basically said, the police department should be organized and consist of 14 full-time officers. That's clear, as determined by the city manager and approved by council. And then, the number of part-time officers shall not exceed the number of full-time members. And period, done. It's clear, straightforward. This was confusing, just language that has existed that we just kind of, every time we didn't modify it for years. And then when we did in 18, we just pulled that old language, plugged it in, changed it from 11 to 12, and just passed it that night. So I think this is much clearer. I don't know if anybody has any concerns.
I don't have a concern, I just have a question. The part-time officer said shall not exceed the number of full-time. Is that because of a labor agreement, or is that because of federal labor laws where you cannot use part-time people and they end up they have full-time hours, but you don't give them the benefits of being a full-time person?
Right, no, it strictly has to do with the labor contract. And it's interesting, it's in the part-time contract, because I think that they didn't want us to see us adding all these part-timers and then never have an opportunity to
Right,
go full-time.
absolutely, yeah, okay.
In fact, during the 08 through 15, I'll say, we ran into that situation because we weren't replacing full-time officers quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the economic
Yeah.
issues with the city. So I think we I vaguely remember this, but like maybe 10 or something like that, 2010, we updated that whole, the full, part-time officers, because I think we had more part-time officers at one time than full-time because of that. But I think we amended this ordinance. So just going back, I vaguely remember that.
I don't recall the timing, I just know it's
Okay.
in the labor contract, and it didn't really make sense.
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe I'm thinking that they approved it in their labor contract or
Yeah,
something.
that's what they did, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what is your wishes on this? First reading, or do you? need
Yeah,
to-
yeah, we don't even have the results back for the exam, so, we can pass it on the next
Okay.
meeting's fine. Take a reading, and if you have any more questions, I know it changed a lot from what you saw on Friday to what's now, but I think this makes a lot more sense.
Any other questions for administration? First reading, council? Does everybody agree to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ordinance number 20-1918. An ordinance assessing cost of the removal of high grass and weeds and declaring an emergency. Oh, good, I'm not on there again. Discussion, council?
Our list keeps getting longer and longer.
Yeah, you got that right. This is ridiculous. Ugh.
You know, we ran into a kind of unique situation down on Bernard. There's a house that's vacant. Somebody, I want to say kids, but I don't know that, broke out, threw some rocks through the windows, whatever, so that we tried to get the landlord to address it, and he won't. And there were some laws passed not too long ago where you can't use plywood to do that, to secure the building, because now we've seen some kids going in there. So you got to either use a plexiglass or some kind of material, so it's going to get expensive, you know. Of course, we'll do it, we'll assess it, put it on there, and hopefully get it paid back. But I even started to think about, you know, I was talking to Greg, and we talk about, and I've always talked this in my life about some people are rough carpenters and some people are carpenters. John was our carpenter, or a finished carpenter, right? And he's no longer with us. But I reached out to John on another issue, and I might see if he has an interest when we have little side projects like this, just to contact directly with him to go in, put in. You saw what work he did on the plexi downstairs. It looks great. He would know how to secure it. It looked decent, and then we'll assess it. So it's a side note from this, but you know, that's we would continue when we do this, you know, to assess it and go from there.
Would you like to see this passed so we can get it down to the
That'd be
tax
great.
office?
I'll make a motion to suspend the two reading rule.
Second.
Mr. Parsons has made a motion to suspend. Mr. Redding, second.
Mrs. Lingo, Mrs. Moody,
Aye.
Mr. Parsons,
Aye.
Miss Peterson,
Aye.
Mr. Redding,
Aye.
Mrs. Dosa,
Aye.
Mr. George.
Aye.
Okay, by a vote of 6-0, two reading rules been suspended. Any other discussion? And I would ask for a motion to adopt.
Make a motion to adopt?
Mr. Redding has made a motion to adopt.
And I'll second.
Mr. George has seconded.
Mrs. Lingo, Mrs. Moody,
Aye.
Mr. Parsons,
Aye.
Miss Peterson,
Aye.
Mr. Redding,
Aye.
Mrs. Dosa,
Aye.
Mr. George.
Aye.
Okay, ordinance 20-1918 is adopted. That is all of our legislation. Moving on then to old business, council. New business. Going once, twice? Denise is not here to close things out. Somebody like to volunteer?
I move that we adjourn.
Ms. Moody has made a motion for adjournment.
I'll second.
Mr. George has seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Meeting is adjourned. We have a work session. Don't run off.
Yep. We can keep it rolling if everybody's okay.
Yep.
Great. No, we don't need to.